It's 0620 in Bandar Abbas. A maintenance crew checks the slings on a submarine hanging from a gantry crane, the same routine they've run all week. What they don't know is that 3 American drone boats are already inside the harbor approaches. Low gray hulls cut through diesel haze over flat green water, running at 28 knots, spray bursting off every bow. The lead boat nudges 2 degrees around a fishing dhow without anyone telling it to. The other 2 match the correction within a second, holding formation to within a yard. The harbor mouth is 5 miles ahead. The submarine pier waits 8 miles beyond that. On the far shore, a fuel truck rolls down the mole, driver's window open, eyes nowhere near the water. At the head of the mole, a canvas-covered gun mount sits with its barrels pointed at the sky. Its crew is on morning tea, 29 minutes to go. The 3 boats slip through the outer anchorage between a rusted tanker and a cluster of dhows, one bearing, no hand on any throttle, and no one in Bandar Abbas anywhere near a radio. The lead boat vanishes behind the tanker's stern for 3 seconds and reappears on the far side, still locked on the harbor mouth. The second lets its wake slap the tanker's anchor chain. The third holds wide, using the dehouse as cover. On the mole, the canvas over the gun mount snaps once in the wind. Nobody pulls it off. This is the home port of Iran's missile boat fleet. The most dangerous thing on the water this morning is a ski boat with a college degree, the Corsair. 24 feet long, about the size of a family ski boat riding almost flush with the wavetops. It's the Saronic Corsair, built to drive itself to a set of coordinates and deliver a payload there. A single diesel pushes it past 35 knots with a range over 1,000 nautical miles, roughly New York to Miami and back offshore. Its cargo bay holds up to 1,000 pounds of explosive, the weight of a grand piano in Warhead. Then something with a crew and guns appears dead ahead. A gray bow swings out of the haze, an Iranian Revolutionary Guard Navy patrol boat, the fast attack arm built for hit-and-run ambushes, finishing a routine smuggler sweep. Nothing this morning has been worth waking anyone for. Its bow steadies on a course that will cross the Corsair's lane inside 2 miles. That's a Houdong-class missile boat, Thondor, in Iranian service, Chinese built, with 10 in service along this coast, 205 tons, 127 feet stem to stern, twin diesels good for the same 35 knots the Corsairs can hit. This is a knife fight, not a mismatch. Its launcher tubes each carry a homegrown copy of the Chinese Sayyad-3 anti-ship missile, a sea skimmer near Mach 1, with a 360-pound warhead and a 75-mile reach, roughly New York to Philadelphia. Its Type 352 radar can pick up destroyer-sized targets past 20 miles. None of that hardware is the real danger. The real danger is the radio on that bridge. One call and the Corsairs are on every shore battery's plot half an hour before impact, and the mission becomes a story Iran tells for a decade. The patrol boat's radar sweeps across the Corsair's bearing once, twice, a third time. Nothing changes, no turn, no signal, no one running to the rail. The set was built to find warships, and everything that makes it good at that job is failing right now. At a shallow angle, the beam skims the sea, and most of its energy bounces back off wave faces as one solid smear sea clutter, and the software's whole job is to throw that smear away. A 24-foot hull sitting flush with the waves looks exactly like the garbage the filter is built to erase. It's a dark stone on a gravel driveway at dusk. Not that your eyes are bad, but that every stone looks the same. Radar isn't the only sensor aboard, though. A lookout on the bridge wing works the water in slow, disciplined arcs, exactly as trained. His glasses pass straight across the Corsair's position, maybe 1 second of silhouette in the morning glare. He keeps moving. 300 miles down the Gulf, in a control room in Bahrain, a single U.S. Navy operator watches this moment unfold through the shared picture, one sailor overseeing all 3 boats, holding approval authority rather than a wheel. The Pentagon calls it human on the loop. Not driving, just able to hit the brakes. He has an abort command loaded. One order turns the boat south and saves the mission for another day. If that lookout gets his 1 second of silhouette, Iran spends the next decade reverse engineering whatever it drags out of its own harbor. He reads the geometry and lets them run. Now, without any command, the lead Corsair eases wide of the patrol boat's path, and the others follow. Throttles drop, wakes flatten. All 3 sit silent as 200 tons of armed patrol boat passes within a mile. The whole decision lived inside the small sensor mast on the Corsair's back, a daylight camera, a thermal camera, and an onboard classifier chip that does all its thinking locally. No transmitter anywhere. A 127-foot steel hull with hot diesel stacks glows against a cool morning sea like a bonfire. The chip tagged it as a patrol craft 5 or 6 miles out, long before any human eye could pick a low composite hull out of the chop. It's the difference between standing in a dark yard looking into a lit kitchen and standing in that kitchen seeing only your own reflection. The patrol boat heads home for breakfast. The detour costs the Corsairs 90 seconds, a delay the plan has already priced in. Miles ahead, past the inner mole, the actual target hangs from a crane. A Ghadir-class midget submarine, barely 90 feet long, shorter than a basketball court, 117 tons, a crew of 7, top speed barely 10 knots, armed with 2 533mm heavyweight torpedo tubes good for 6 miles underwater. Its whole purpose is to sit on the floor of the Strait of Hormuz and wait for something worth 1,000 of it to pass overhead. This morning, the snake is hanging from a crane, and a submarine out of the water is the only kind that can't hide. 8 miles from the pier, 20 minutes to go, and Iran's air defense net is wide awake. U.S. Navy fighters have worked the coastline since dawn, and every crew on this shore is standing post with the safeties off. On the ridge above the harbor, a long-range early warning radar sweeps through the boat's bearing every few seconds and gets nothing useful. That radar, from 1,000 feet up, can spot fighter-sized targets nearly 280 miles out and track 100 at once, but its lowest beam sits about half a degree above the horizon. 100 miles downrange, that floor is already more than a mile above the sea. A boat at 0 feet passes underneath every beam for the whole approach, a porch light that lights up every bird for a mile and never touches the raccoon walking beneath it. But south of the coast, an Iranian scope picks up something real and American. An MQ-9 Reaper drone flying a lazy racetrack just inside missile range, altitude and heading steady, exactly the fight this crew has trained for. A truck-mounted launcher fires within a minute, chasing the Reaper skyward. It dodges by a hair. The Reaper is a 36-foot, 66-foot wingspan American drone built to watch and strike from 25,000 feet for over 20 hours, cruising near 230 miles per hour, normally carrying Hellfire missiles or bombs. Today, it's carrying something more valuable, Iranian attention. The launcher is a Khordad 15 firing a Sayyad-3, Iran's long-range surface-to-air system, a battery that can detect fighter-sized targets past 90 miles, engage at 50, and go from road march to firing in about 5 minutes. Real professional capability. Its missile climbs on ground guidance toward an intercept point recalculated every second, reaching past 80,000 feet against a target flying at a third of that, closing near Mach 4 with a roughly 440-pound fragmentation warhead. The crew watches it fall into the Gulf instead. That system can fight anything in the sky. The real attack is at 0 feet, underneath everything it can see. The bouncer just caught someone on the roof while the front door stood open because nobody flies a lazy racetrack inside SAM range by accident. The strike planners wanted every radar operator on this coast staring upward this morning. 3 minutes later, the boats 6 miles out now lose GPS. Satellite fix goes fuzzy. It then drops entirely on all 3. A truck-mounted jammer parked above the harbor is doing it. Not spoofing, just drowning the real signal in noise. A GPS satellite's signal arrives from 12,000 miles up, absurdly faint by the time it reaches a boat. A truck putting out a few hundred watts on the same frequency overwhelms every receiver in the basin. Without a fix, each boat's inertial system counts its own steps in the dark, drifting further every minute. 10 minutes of drift can walk a half-ton warhead onto the wrong pier. The answer isn't a stronger antenna. The boats already know this coastline. Camera turrets swivel to the shoreline and small course corrections follow a degree here, a degree there, holding the tracks to plan as if the satellites never left. Planners loaded a digital map of the harbor before launch. The breakwater corner, the outer mole, the crane line, the channel buoys. The turret and a low-power navigation radar take bearings on those landmarks several times a second, and 2 cross bearings on known points pin position to within a car length at a mile of range. It's driving home on a dead phone battery. You don't need the map app on a road you already know. Iran's jamming just met the worst possible opponent, a boat that already knows the harbor. 5 miles out, the last antenna on each boat goes silent, one final status burst, then nothing. That silence is deliberate. From here, the mission runs entirely on board. If a tanker drifts across the lane, no one can radio a warning through. The sailor in Bahrain has already signed off on that. He approved the final run knowing exactly what it meant. It's walking your kid to the corner and watching him cross the last block alone, trusting he knows the way. 5 miles to run, and the boat split to hit the pier complex from 3 directions. Somewhere in that split, each one crossed its final waypoint, carrying just enough fuel to reach friendly water, nothing spare. Weeks earlier, in the Gulf of Oman, a Corsair from Task Force 59 used its rescue deck to pull 2 downed American aircrew from the sea. These 3 gave that deck up entirely. Roughly a third of a Corsair's loaded weight is normally return fuel and recovery gear, and stripping it out lets the warhead grow by the same amount a 1,000-mile boomerang rebuilt as a 500-mile dart. Why 3 separate lanes? Because of what happens in the first second after the first explosion. The boat on the shortest run throttles back. The one on the longest lane digs in at a hard 35 knots, 3 different speeds, chosen by no one aboard. The final legs measure roughly 4.8, 5.2, and 5.6 nautical miles. Run them all at identical speed and the strikes land 90 seconds apart, the first blast waking every gun on the mole before the second and third boats arrive. So the plan reverses it. Longer path, higher throttle, shorter path, eased back every boat reaching its aim point inside a 10-second window. Artillery crews have used this trick for 80 years and call it time on target. Every round landing in the same breath, regardless of where it started. There's a cost to that extra throttle on flat water. 3 white wakes pointed straight at the pier, visible to anyone looking down instead of up. Halfway down the second lane, a fisherman looks up from his tee as a low gray shape hisses past 50 yards off his rail, no one visible at any wheel. By the time he processes what he saw, the wake is already fading toward the pier. Everything this morning has been aimed at one gantry crane straddling the pier. Iran runs its entire Hormuz-facing midget submarine fleet through this yard, about 14 Ghadir-class hulls, and each one needs a haul-out inspection roughly once a year. Seals, batteries, shafts, coatings. Only this yard on the whole coast has the lift capacity to do it. Break the crane, and every boat in that fleet is effectively parked for good. The submarine in the slings is one hull. The lift and the shops behind it are worth 13 more. That's the real target, the structure, not just the steel hanging in it, and the trade runs heavily in America's favor. A Corsair is flat composite panels and a single diesel off a production line, built for low 7 figures each, with output ramping toward hundreds a year. Against it, a repair yard worth hundreds of millions and years to rebuild. The Navy is trading pawns to take a rook. On the mole, a guard has spent his whole shift scanning the sky like everyone else. Squinting into the glare on the water, his eye catches one white line cutting across the light, then 2 more beside it. His radio comes off his belt. If his warning beats the boats by even a minute, the twin-barreled gun mount at the head of the mole gets 30 seconds of aimed fire at slow, unarmored targets nearly 2,000 rounds a minute out to 1.5 miles, a fire hose made of steel. 30 seconds is more than enough, in theory. 2 tons of boat at 35 knots hits like a loaded pickup truck slamming a post at 40 enough to cave in steel plate, nowhere near enough to bring down a crane on its own. But the boat was never the weapon. The charge riding in its bay is. The fuse fires the instant the boat touches steel, at the waterline against the crane's legs, the cruelest place to detonate anything, since water won't compress and shoves the blast straight back up into the structure that's supposed to be bearing 117 tons of submarine, not absorbing a half-ton of explosive at the knees. The sentry's call breaks over a loudspeaker. The crew chief doesn't ask a single question, just yells one word, and every man sprints for the seawall. At 300 yards, the canvas comes off the gun, and it starts firing. The first burst tears the water 20 yards behind the lead boat, leading a target this small and this fast is a shot nobody on that mole has ever practiced, he corrects, and the second burst walks a line of geysers close enough to soak the deck. At 200 yards, the gunner has used up exactly the half-minute head start the sentry bought him. There's no third correction, 2 more wakes now on 2 different bearings, and the gun can only chase one. At 06:51, the lead Corsair buries itself into the gantry's waterline. Flash first. The crack rolling across the harbor half a second later. Boats 2 and 3 hammer into the covered shops on either side of the pier in the same narrow window, while the gun is still hunting the second wake. The crane folds, and the submarine drops into the wreckage of its own cradle. A single column of black smoke climbs over Bandar Abbas in the morning sun. Task Force 59 made its name pulling American sailors out of this water. This morning, its boats wrote a different page, the first combat strike ever carried out by unmanned American surface vessels, with not one American within 300 yards of the blast. Iran spent 40 years building a fortress that watches the sky. The question this morning leaves behind, How do you defend a harbor from a navy that can lose 100 boats and never lose a single sailor?